Powerful Hurricane Matthew roaring through the Bahamas on track for Florida. I'm Mike Naso from the Tropical Video Update page here on YouTube with the latest on this very, very dangerous major hurricane we've been following for days. As you know, it was a Category 5 hurricane in the southern Caribbean Sea, and then it made that northward turn, impacted Haiti as a high-end Category 4 hurricane, and then again a Category 4 landfall over Cuba. It weakened down to a Category 3, but it appears to be getting better organized as it approaches Andros Island in the Bahamas and is on track for, at the very least, an extremely close call with the Florida coastline. This is a very dangerous storm. Now let's get to the latest particulars on Matthew. Now, this is as of 11 p.m. It was at 23.4 north, 76.4 west, maximum sustained winds 115 miles per hour, gusting as high as 140. It's moving northwest at about 10 miles per hour. That pressure was down to 961 millibars. Some recon estimates it's down into the upper 950s, so it is intensifying, and it's expected to strengthen back into a Category 4 hurricane, roar right through Nassau, Andros Island, just south of Grand Bahama Island. A very devastating impact there. Very high storm surge potential, potentially up to 15 feet in some of these islands, and of course the devastating winds. And then make landfall, possibly near Cape Canaveral, Daytona. If it doesn't come completely ashore, it's still so close as a Category 4 hurricane. It would be very, very, very bad news. So all of those residents need to be having their plan of action in place. After that, it could still make another landfall from Georgia to the Carolinas. Right now, computer models suggesting it's going to kind of get left behind out here and weaken to a tropical storm, but we'll still be dealing with it out there come Monday. But until then, we're going to have to deal with a very significant major hurricane impact along the Florida East Coast. Now, we do have hurricane warnings in effect. Hurricane warning for north of the Flagler-Volusia County line to Fernandina Beach, Florida. And we also have hurricane warnings, obviously, for the southeast Bahamas, the central Bahamas, the northwest Bahamas, including the Abacos, Eleuthera, Bimini, Grand Bahama Island, New Providence, and north of Golden Beach to Fernandina Beach, including Lake Okeechobee, all under hurricane warnings. And then from Fernandina to Edisto Beach, South Carolina, we have a hurricane watch. And of course, the tropical storm watches and warnings, even on the west coast and in the Keys. Just a lot of warnings for this hurricane because it is so dangerous. You have to be getting your plan of action in place now. You should have had it in place like you do every hurricane season, but you need to be ready, boarded up, evacuating, doing everything you have to do because this is expected to be a Category 4 hurricane impact along the Florida East Coast. There's the wind field. You can see hurricane force winds impinging on Andros Island there. And there's Nassau, there's Eleuthera, and we'll show you some of the Bahamas a little bit up close in just a little bit. And I'll give you details on where the eye of the hurricane may go, because remember, hurricane force winds extend out, but this is still a compact hurricane. The winds have never really extended out as far as they could have ever since this thing was in the Caribbean Sea. However, it is still a very powerful hurricane, and if that core passes over you, it will be quite dramatic how fast those winds increase. And there's the water vapor imagery, and you can see as of about midnight, this thing is strengthening. I mean, it looks better than it has since it left Cuba. It looks like a classic donut shape, the strengthening convection right around the eye, and the eye starting to pop out there better. A very impressive hurricane. And you can see again, this is Nassau in the Bahamas, and this is Andros Island, and Grand Bahama Island, the Abacos up to the north. And you can see the eye is on track for Andros Island, and it might go right over it as a strengthening hurricane. That'd be very, very devastating. Here's another view of the storm. You could see as it gets into motion there. Very ominous with southeast Florida, the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area right here. And there is the eye of our strengthening major hurricane moving on off towards the northwest in this general direction over the next 12 to 24 hours. And by Friday, that is when we are likely to see the significant impact and perhaps landfall of this storm. There's the radar out of Miami, and again you can start to see, very, very ominous here, the banding of the hurricane coming over Andros Island. The winds, as each of these rain bands progresses, are going to get worse and worse. And then look right out in here, you're starting to get a glimpse of the eye wall. And again, the northwest motion should take it in a direction generally like that. And so if you are in areas, West Palm Beach, Fort Pierce, Melbourne, Daytona, and everywhere in between, you need to be on the highest level of alert because you might be in the eye wall of a major hurricane in just about 36 hours. Now, another view of it on the infrared satellite imagery, you could see very, very impressive there. As a matter of fact, it looks like it's strengthening. The cold cloud top surrounding the eye, and that's not what you want to see. That's not what you want to see. This is a compact, strengthening major hurricane moving over very hot waters, by the way, and that's only going to fuel it. You can see the pattern here is looking very favorable. It doesn't quite have the outflow pattern that it had when it was a Category 5 hurricane in the Caribbean, but it certainly has enough to bring it back to a Category 4, and that's just about as devastating as you could get without being the worst ever. So that should tell you how dangerous this hurricane really is. Now here's a map of the Bahamas, and as I mentioned, this is Andros Island here, Nassau off towards its northeast, Eleuthera Island here, and Eleuthera was the island that the eye of Hurricane Andrew crossed on that fateful track back in 1992 to Homestead in southeast Florida. Cat Island off to the northeast, you're going to have impacts, but again, right now the hurricane is moving just south of Georgetown and Long Island on track towards Andros. So that's going to be the location where we'll possibly see another landfall. Remember, it made landfall in Haiti, it made landfall in Cuba, and now it's on track to make landfall in the Bahamas, and then the impacts in Florida and perhaps points north. This is just a very, very serious hurricane, guys. It really is. Now, the computer model guidance has been wanting to keep this thing kind of looped around, some of them even showing it in the Gulf of Mexico in the long range. Of course, it'd be much weaker by then, but still, to get hit twice by one system is kind of a slap in the face, or a slap in the coast, depending on how you look at it. And the model guidance is in very good agreement that it's going to either get super, super close or make a direct landfall in that area of the Florida coastline that I showed you before. And again, you can't rule out it making landfall in an area like Cape Canaveral, you know, and impacting areas like Melbourne and Daytona, and then coming back out, scraping up, and making a second landfall in Georgia or South Carolina or North Carolina. It's just too early to tell, even at this stage, when you're dealing with this weird angle to the coastline and a hurricane moving northwest and a coast that slopes back and up. It is very difficult to say where exact landfalls will go. And that's the reason, by the way, that Georgia gets hit so infrequently by hurricanes. Not because they're not out there, not because they haven't done it in the past, but just because it's rare to get a storm that could actually hit Georgia. Normally they're moving into Florida or turning into the Carolinas. To get one that actually comes in is quite rare, but it has happened before, and it no doubt will happen again. Now, the ensemble models you could see doing a loop-to-loop in the longer range. That's from the GFS ensembles. We're going to keep an eye on that. We also have Nicole out there. I'm not going to touch on Nicole right now because Matthew is just too serious to take away the focus, but Nicole's going to be spinning out there to the east of Matthew for the next several days as a tropical storm. And again, that won't help the high swells for Bermuda and the East Coast. We're going to be dealing with that, especially close by. A Category 4 hurricane just offshore making landfall is going to be significant high surf and the potential for, obviously, the strong winds and the storm surge. I did want to note the wind shear over the top of the hurricane is much more favorable than it was even a couple of days ago when it was a Category 5. Low wind shear, higher off to its northwest, but again, that really shouldn't impact it prior to its direct landfall or indirect landfall in Florida. So this thing is set to strengthen, and we're going to have to watch it very, very closely because it's already caused so much devastation, and it's so powerful and getting even stronger, and that forecast track is one of the scariest I've seen in my 15 years of tracking these things. So we're going to keep an eye on it. I'm Mike Naso. I will talk to you guys later.